Hey, freshmen, let's continue talking about your writing process for the final reflection. Remember, here's the overview. We're tying together 3 experiences: your reading of Fahrenheit 451, how to break up with your phone, and COVID-19. And we're tying those all together with a central conflict. Okay. You've already been through the writing workshop 1, in which you chose your audience and your conflicts, started to brainstorm and test drive some of those conflicts, and then to begin to organize your ideas. So for today, the next step that I recommend is to gather your supporting details. Gather your evidence. You may have an idea of what you want your evidence to be, but today you should really start choosing specific quotations, specific details, and events that you want to use that are all relevant to that central conflict. So remember, it all has to come back to that blank versus blank. And remember, there are 2 sides to a conflict. So you can't just have a quote that represents one half of it. You've got to have evidence and details that represent both sides of that conflict. Okay, so where do you look? Let me make a few suggestions. In Fahrenheit 451, you might take a look at Montag's journey. We talked a lot about Montag's conflict with himself. How does his journey from "it was a pleasure to burn" to a complete crisis in the middle to a different person at the end, hopeful, right? How can you see the conflict that you've chosen represented in his journey? Maybe there's something there. Or maybe you can select 2 characters who really sort of represent the 2 sides of the conflict and discuss those characters as symbols. Or we've got Beatty and we've got Faber, who both have very long lectures about what they think about the state of the world. And because these 2 guys are on opposite sides of the spectrum, they probably say some opposite things, right? Any number of the conflicts can be found in both Beatty's lecture and Faber's lecture. And then we have Clarice. Maybe go back and look at some of Clarice's point of view. What does she say about life? What does she say about school? What does she say about other people? What does she say about herself? What does she say about Montag? Maybe there's something in Clarice's point of view that can help you discuss that conflict. Okay, so a little pro tip here: figurative language is always more interesting. So as you look through these portions of the book looking for evidence, choosing a metaphor or a simile or some really powerful imagery is going to be more interesting in your essay, because you're going to have more to say about it. You're going to need to unpack that figurative language and explain to the reader what it means. So how about the breakup? Where should you look for evidence in the breakup? Well, the first half of the book, called The Wake Up, is full of statistics and facts about why people need to break up with their phones and develop healthier relationships. You can use any of that. There's a lot of testimonial quotes throughout the book where other people who have used Catherine Price's methods talk about what it did for them or talk about their own struggles. You might find some representations of the conflict there. And then, of course, your experience during the breakup needs to be a part of this as well. Maybe go back and look through your journal. What were some of your thoughts and emotions as you did this? Maybe look at the recap that you submitted to me. You guys wrote some lovely things in there. You can use that as part of your supporting details. And side note, you don't have to quote yourself. It's you. Just say it. And finally, COVID-19, that's 100% your experience. I want to hear about how this has been for you, watching the global pandemic unfold, your own reaction to it, your family's reaction to it, the decision to close schools, the social distancing, the staying at home. How does that bring us back to that conflict? How is that relevant to your experience? And then there's additional sources that you can use, but you don't have to. They're totally optional. We watched the John Green video. That might be relevant if you're talking about pleasure versus fulfillment, or if you're talking about living versus non-living, or if you're talking about connection and isolation, or if you're talking about, what was the other one? Nature versus technology. In the Marvel Movies article, there's a lot there about quality. The swimming article is nature. It's mindfulness versus distraction, right? The paradox video could be useful for almost anything, because these conflicts in a big way are paradoxes, right? They're 2 opposing forces that sort of need each other in a way. So the paradox video could be useful as a way to introduce the topic to begin with and to present that conflict. Okay? So gather some evidence, be as specific as possible, gather more than you need so that you have options, right? It's always good to have more than not enough. And once you feel like you've got a good collection of evidence, start writing. All right, have a good day.